I think we are live. Fresh root beer is nice and cracked. I think I'm probably going to wait for people to get in here before I just, continue on talking to myself. But last time on the Form Check Friday streaming it was way more fun than it was to, just have me and I talking to a camera. Makes it like more interesting when I am forced to not screw up my speech because, well, people are actually watching live. So no longer parched. Anywho, come on, viewers, roll in here, please. Please roll in here. Gonna move the camera up a little bit, actually. Oh boy. Oh, no, it's sagging. I probably could have just lifted it up vertically instead of tilting. Let's see if that works. Oh, there we go. Am I in frame? No, it's too high now. Damn it. Okay, hold on. Still too high when I lean the chair back. Okay. Okay. Top-notch production quality here. It's still too high, but if I don't lean the chair back, I don't know, I want to lean the chair back. Whatever. You guys in the live right now, did you answer questions in the AMA, or do you have anything you want to get into while you are here? Because if you did answer questions in the AMA, I'll probably just figure out who's in here and I can address that question. But if you didn't, I will let you ask some stuff on the live stream too. I feel like this is probably the boringest stream anyone on earth has ever watched. So hopefully, hopefully we get some interesting stuff going. But if no one is typing in the chat, look at that. Isn't that fancy? Got the, oh no, wrong way the camera, didn't realize it was mirrored. Okay, we're over here. But I feel like what I will get rolling on is heels or flats for a squatter with low back history. And the biggest thing I'd be thinking about is, do the flat shoes feel like they're exposing your low back more? And kind of the biggest thing I'd be looking at on the squat is, does it look like your squat could benefit from more forward knee travel? And like, are you someone that is almost overhinging? And if you are the person that is kind of like overhinging, they're having trouble getting into their knees, then getting into heels, getting the knees a little bit further forward could definitely help with taking pressure off of the low back. But with that being said, if we're talking about taking pressure off the low back and modifying the squat technique to do so, we also want to be making sure that the back is getting stronger and more capable of handling work, because even if we pull pressure off of it by going into heels, then we're eventually going to run into a place where if you end up squatting enough weight, like even if you do have the pressure taken off of it by modifying technique, you're still going to eventually expose it. So the biggest thing I want to prioritize is, regardless of whether you are in flats or heels, you should be thinking about like, hey, let's figure out ways we can train the low back to make it more durable. And if someone is starting off from like absolute ground zero on low back stuff, I think a really friendly protocol to run is going to be doing like a 45-degree back extension or a back extension on a glute ham raise, where we are doing it, instead of trying to add load weight for specific sets and reps, we're doing it with like 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest until you get a massive low erector pump. And that can be a really good way to introduce more work, get the low back in better shape, and get the thing going a little bit better. And like, once that feels solid, once you go a bunch of rounds, you could either reduce the rest interval, you could increase the work time. And once that feels good, we could progress to just loading that sucker up and make it really strong. And that could be like a good way to build up some low back strength so things aren't too wonky. Now, as far as next question, again, you guys in the chat, feel free to toss something in there too, because I want to prioritize the people that are here and in it. Didn't get a ton of AMAs either compared to my normal, probably just because I was answering them on YouTube. That usually happens when I do the YouTube AMA. Oh, Marcus is in here. So go-tos for knee tendonitis on a peak, little bit of pain also on the top of quads. So my normal kind of stance on tendonitis, tendinopathy, is going to go way deeper into this tomorrow night in the live lecture on the team. So if you guys do have tendinopathy, I'm basically giving you the full framework on how to think about tendinopathy, what's going on, how to reduce it. But to kind of summarize that, The way I kind of deal with tendinopathy is basically the goal is to try to get the tendon to do a better job of being a tendon. And we got to think about like, what do we want a tendon to do? Well, we want the tendon to transmit force from the contracting muscle to the bone that it's trying to move and have a little bit of elasticity while it's doing so, with enough resiliency that the tendon doesn't break down and get shitty if we really do load it, or pop off potentially as well. And if I'm thinking about doing that, usually what I want to do is modify main work loading so the main work is not irritating the tendon. We can actually think about modifying range of motion as well. But if you're in a peak, both of those aren't great options. So what we really want to do is, if we can't modify loading in a peak to get the tendon in better shape, what we really want to hammer is prep work so that we can get that tendon to respond a little bit more elastically. We can get the tendon to be a little bit more tolerant to loading. And something that I really, really, really love here, let me just switch my screens around a little bit. Voila, look at that. Wish I had like a fancier like thingy that Bryce has on his, but I'll let you make this a little bit bigger. Oh, okay, sick. Just get my desktop popping around everywhere. But gonna go into the classroom and the team. Marcus is in the team, so I'm just gonna do this too so he knows where to look for stuff. But if you go click on the classroom tab at the top, that's calendar, whoops, not classroom. Click on movement library. I'm gonna tone shoulders down, get rid of the hips, get rid of the low back, open up knees. And then what I think my number one thing to do, like in the context of a prep where we're not going to be able to push super hard, but just doing some kneeling holds, kneeling squats, where we're trying to sit our ass as low as we can to lengthen the quad, get a little bit of lean back going to get a little bit more length in. Just hanging on to the bottom here can, oh, he's already been doing the kneeling squats. Looking at the chat. Okay. Kneeling squats seem to bother the inside of his knee. He's already been doing HEG splits. So if both of these are kind of weird, like with the kneeling squats bothering the inside of your knee, what do you think it is? Do you think that the kneeling squat is just like too much range, or do you think that there's something else going on? Because if this is too much range, what I'd be thinking about doing is tossing a foam roller on your Achilles tendon. That way you have something to stop you in the bottom. And what I'd be prioritizing is, once your ass touches the foam roller, then we can think about leaning backwards, turn it into a little bit more of reverse Nordic. And that could be an entry point to make this more doable. But the other thing, well, I know it's not Friday. This ain't a form check Friday. It's a Ask Questions Monday. I don't know, something like that. But if these are kind of like a little bit sketchy, I just want to modify the range of motion to make them more doable. And how often are you doing them, Marcus? Get Dave's in the chat for now, but yeah, this ain't a Form Check Friday, is it? Did it go live to the Form Check Friday one? I swear I started the. Let me just check YouTube. Oh, damn it. I don't know how to fix this. Let me just switch over here. Trying to fix. Technical difficulties. Content. Gosh darn it. Okay, Instagram Live AMA. Getting the. Can I edit the thumbnail on here? Oh, come on. Darn it, Seth. Wow. I am so much worse at this than Bryce. This is hilarious. Find it in the downloads. Gotta sort my downloads by date. Date last opened. Where the hell did it go? Gotta open Canva. Shit. I use Canva for all of my thumbnails. FYI, it's probably the easiest one to make work. Download. I am such an idiot. Wow. Save. Okay, so new joiners are going to be now going to the right spot. Sorry about that, guys. But Marcus is saying maybe he thinks he's doing doing too much, because when you first introduced the kneeling squats, they didn't hurt, but one set can't hurt, right? And how bad does it hurt, Marcus? Because if it's just like there's a little bit of pressure and it's not super weird, then I might be thinking like, okay, we can do it more often. But if it is going to be something where we are like, it feels like it is like the femur's getting rotated on the tibia more than it wants, I might be looking at some tibial rotation stuff as well. And what I like for tibial rotation is going to be trying to get one of these guys going where we're doing the toe elevated ankle roll. Yeah, so 1 to 2 out of 10 pain. So I wouldn't be too worried. I just try to see like if you can keep doing it, then we should just see like if it does get better. So I might try to go for like instead of once a day, I might try to go for like 2, 3, 4 times a day. And if it does get worse, obviously stop. But if it gets better, just lean in. And what I want to add to that plan then is going to be looking at something that'll increase a little bit of tib rotation tolerance. So we're going to go toe up on a yoga block, and then we're going to try to roll the ankle side to side. And if you're doing 7 days a week, 1 set kneeling squats, 1 set ATG split squats, then 2 sets pre-squat on training day, like that's going to be one of the things where we definitely want to bump up the frequency lever, because like doing it once a day, like you are doing it every day, but like I would love to see like 3, 4, 5 times a day if you can fit it into the schedule. And again, that'll kind of give us more information on whether or not it is helping. But what I want to do is see if we can, use the frequency as a lever to help that desensitization, and then adding this in should help with tib rotation. And I go same thing on the ATG split squats, because with that, you should be able to kind of get that tib rotation to work even better, especially if we are going really up onto the toes. So I think like that would be what I would be prioritizing kind of as like the first line of attack to see if we can get the thing to work a little bit better. I'm actually overwhelmed not having Miana here to keep track of the chat. So this is why it's a little bit rougher. Like I'm getting exposed for how much Miana actually helps, with everything in the background here. And yeah, I'd say it absolutely is not a coincidence that the knee pain only happens on the ankle that you broke. And that's kind of making me lean more towards the tib rotation stuff, because if that ankle is bound up, have you been in the lecture library yet, Marcus? Because we have this guy, we have the feet and ankles lecture. I would really watch this, because the ankle is kind of going to be what allows the tibial rotation to happen from the bottom side. So running that toe elevated ankle roll should help a ton with getting that ankle to come up so the tibia can actually rotate so that the knee is able to move. Because if the ankle doesn't move well, then that not moving well demand is going to be transferred up to the knee, and shit's going to get shitty. So I would say absolutely yes, taking the ankle rotation. Give this lecture a watch when you do have a chance. But I will keep on moving around, because Kyler, I did not get into your question yet. So should new powerlifters focus on the main lifts or non-jigit when joining team programming? So I'll just pull up my strength book in the background here just so I can talk about what I'm talking about. But I think that it's going to depend on whether or not you want to learn how to make conjugate work. Because with conjugate, got the team program app from my side up. So we have a bunch of options here for just like kind of stock programs that are designed to peek into a meet. We also have the team programming stuff, my own programming stuff, and we have the newest wave of team programming, the newest wave of the non-jigit. And both of these have the same accessory structure, except team programming is more of like a pure conjugate where we are changing main lifts every week. Non-jigit is just going to be like a linear undulating barbell main lift on squat, bench, and deadlift. You're still going to be doing speed work. You're still going to be doing hard secondaries and accessories. So there will be kind of like a concurrent element to it, but it's not true conjugate. And I think, Kyler, if you let me know, do you want to learn how to make conjugate work? Because if you want to learn how to make it work, you want to learn how to kind of scale variations, schedule variations, and then have it add into better performance on the main lifts, I would say just dive into the team programming. If you, oops, open my AirPods. I need something to fidget with when I'm talking, FYI. That's kind of why I hold the microphone a little in a lot of the videos, because it helps me with my fidgeting tendencies. But if you want to learn how to make conjugate work, I would just jump into team programming, and it's going to be kind of like a learn as you go, and I'll be able to give you feedback, obviously, like we have been in the team, and we should be able to make that work better and better for you. But if you want to just kind of go like the safer option, especially if you got something coming up, the non-jigit might be better for you if you want to kind of not have as much weird stuff going on with with, having to change the lift every week and kind of keep track of what variations and whatnot. But I think, like, as far as tracking variations go, I think that the app is freaking sick for conjugate options because you can just put the variation that you're doing in the team programming. Like, if we preview the program, you can kind of see that I have kind of like variations listed in here. So, like, if for the skill limited max effort, if someone is, struggling with staying in the legs, I want to run in high bar in the squat. If someone is crumpling, I want to go no hand SSB. If someone has trouble staying tight in the hole, I want to run a long pause. And there's other options too that we talk about in the team for different guys for their specific needs. But I just have 3 kind of samples here for variations that a guy could run. And in the app, then if you are running a variation, you just click on the skill max limited max effort, you go swap exercise, put the variation in that you are doing, and that way you can kind of track your variations individually and kind of track PRs, and that can help you the next time you come back to the variation to know whether or not you have been getting better. And if you're already on the team programming and like you're making her work, like, let's just keep on making her work, because I think that, like, everything I'm seeing from you in there, it is doing what we need it to do. So I'm not too worried. And as far as training in Ireland after the seminar lecture, I'm going to be basically getting chauffeured around by Keelan. So I don't want to, have to learn how to drive on the left-hand side of the road on my own. So I'm going to let him do all the driving. So I'm going to be kind of at the kind of a victim of his schedule a little bit, but I'll probably be around a little bit, but we'll be mostly training at his gym, I would assume. And Eric is asking about if I have any lectures about hips. So yes, absolutely. We have a hip SIJ specific lecture for kind of hip issues, SIJ issues. We also have the SPD biomechanics series where holy shit, Len, thank you so much. Len just signed up on annual, which is sick. And as far as these biomechanics lectures, it's kind of a breakdown of all of the joint and muscular actions that we kind of want to allow to happen during the lifts and how to set up technique to allow those to happen for different leverage points. So, kind of depending on what you are dealing with, I think that these lectures could be really helpful. But then the other thing is too is like what I'm getting guys to do that come in here. I haven't been in here because since like 5 a.m. because I got up early to crank on everything and got that done, and then went through my Monday one-on-ones. But with in here in the team, basically what's happening is guys are kind of being able to post their videos, post what they're doing, and then my whole goal there is to just make whatever they're doing better. Whether it is like, hey, let's see this range of motion test so that we can get that range of motion looking better. Let's try this accessory to see if we can make this thing stronger. Let's change this thing technically, or let's change this strategy wise in your setup. And that can be a really good way to just get like insane levels of feedback at a way less cost than you'd be paying for a coach that's going to give you less feedback than we are in here. So I am pumping the team lots, but it is so freaking cool on my end to see how much better everyone is getting inside. And what's cool too is like you can see how active it is I make sure that everything is taken care of every single day. So like you're going to get to see all the feedback I'm giving people on all of their stuff every day, which is going to help you learn more. But Jeremias is asking, he has severe pain unracking the bench. He loses a lot of strength from unracking it. And when someone else unracks for him, he has no pain whatsoever. So let me know which body part you're having pain in and like kind of where, and I'll be able to give you a bit better idea. But going to get back to the AMA. Bro Brogan, that's Doug. He has the sickest mustache on earth, FYI. If you don't know Doug, he's got like a big honker. I'm really jealous of it. But dips, even assisted, makes his shoulders explode. Should he sub them out? If so, what are the best alternatives? And I think that like if dips are sketchy, what we want to kind of think about is the biggest difference between a dip and a bench press. And the biggest difference, in my head at least, is that a bench press, the shoulder blades are going to be externally stabilized by the bench pad, whereas on a dip, you got to do all of that stability by yourself. So if a dip is sketchy, a lot of times it's just like the serratus' ability to hold the shoulder blade on the rib cage, or at least control the shoulder blade travel on the rib cage. So I'd be thinking if dips are sketchy, what I would want to do is, number one, can we assist a dip and make it doable? Because if we can assist a dip and make it doable, I might just want to go that route. But if a dip is still sketchy, even assisted, what I'd want to do is still challenge that scapular control, but in a less aggressively loaded manner. And that should be a good way to ease your way towards dips. And what I like for that is getting some blocks out to put your hands on so we can do a push up, drop through into the bottom and get a big stretch, and then push all the way through and make sure that we're pushing the shoulder blades as far away from the rib cage as possible. And that should kind of start getting the serratus in shape. If that is still too sketchy, what I like to do is have guys set up a reverse band on a chin-up bar. So I put the reverse band around the rib cage, support some weight in the bottom, and then still get that big serratus push through at the top. And we just want to kind of progress that towards the standard full range push-ups. We can even add some band loading on the full range push-ups to make those gnarlier. Then once that is really good with bands, then all we got to do is move our way on to trying some assisted dips, and we can build back that way. Factory Stage is asking, hey, should the pelvic floor muscles be actively engaged during bracing? Also, how to brace with belt. Diaphragm breathing and core tension feel off belted. Tried to loosen tighten belt and no, and it's bleh, I can't read right now apparently, but that's not helping. So I think that like as far as pelvic floor, yes, we do want it to be engaged, but it almost should automatically. And if you feel like pelvic floor is not doing its job, I had Jordan in the team doing this the other day because he's someone that joined with a tweaked back and we're helping him, and then he coughed the other day and everything got all jacked up from that cough. But what's kind of going to be happening, what we want to kind of teach the pelvic floor to do is when we're bracing, we want the pelvic floor to elevate so we have pressure coming up from the bottom. And what I like to do to teach that is have a guy lay down on the floor with their lower leg propped up on a couch or chair or whatever, or bench, just so they can have their knees bent. And in that position, as we are breathing, what we want to do is try to breathe low, try to have the pelvic floor expand and push down. Then we want to kind of like almost suck the pelvic floor up like a Kegel, contract the abs as that diaphragm elevates. And that's going to kind of help teach us to get that pelvic floor integration into the brace. So that'd be something to play with if you are struggling with it. But as far as the brace feels off when belted, I think the thing that I would want to do is if you were to just brace without the belt, I'd want to kind of set the belt at a tension level where you kind of just like you have your brace, you're getting that little bit of breathe in, you're getting that contraction, everything locks down. And as that contraction happens, what we want to do is have the belt just light enough that we're able to push into it with contraction and we don't have to reach out for it. Because if we are reaching out for the belt, then we're not going to have as much, rib to pelvis tension on the front side to lock us in. If we're having to, the belt's really tight and we can't have any expansion at all, that again, that's going to get in the way of that rib pelvis tension on the front side, as well as, the obliques and TVA too. So I think it's going to be like have the belt just tight enough that as you do your normal beltless brace and clamp down, that just expands into the belt and it's able to lock you in harder and enhance tension. And the other thing too with belt versus beltless is I'm not a huge fan of beltless training, because with beltless training, like wearing a belt is a skill. And if we're really freaking good at squatting beltless, then it's just going to be a matter of like putting the belt on and just running it until we learn how to use it better. And like even on speed work, when it is pretty light, like I always belt up for every single speed work session, even though it's light enough that I could easily squat without the belt. It's just because I want that belt brace practice, because the intent of speed squats is to get just practice specific to what we were trying to display on the platform. So run that belt more often, try to see if you can kind of get that like happy middle ground of tight and loose, where it's not too tight to prevent contraction, but it's also not so loose that you have to reach out into it. And that should help things out. And Jeremiah is asking, or he's confirming, that it is on his left shoulder and the pain runs all the way to his biceps. And I think that there's a couple routes that I might want to go. And number one is, if you are someone that's trying to just squeeze shoulder blades back, then that's going to be shutting off serratus. So we're not going to be able to catch the bar super well. And then other shit's going to have to take some of that loading. And if it does help, again, I think like if getting unrack helps, like that unrack might force a little bit of that to happen, which then could get serratus on enough to kind of stop this stuff from being shitty. So like if you are squeezing together really hard, I would just, instead of trying to squeeze back and together, just try to be neutral and then pull down. You're still going to get a little bit back, but if that neutral pull down into the arch is happening without over squeezing back, we're going to have the serratus on, and then the coraco, the pec minor, they're not going to have to freak right out to try to create that stability. And if that still doesn't help, the biggest thing that I might want to play with is going to be hand pressure and spread. Because if we're benching and we're putting more pressure through the thumb side, that's going to kind of like force everything down the inside of the arm to take a little bit more loading to stabilize the bar. If we're focusing on lateral hand pressure and really trying to flex the triceps hard and then spreading into the bar, that's going to get the triceps and rear delt to take a little bit more of the work and should take pressure off the junk in here. And I think the last thing to think about as well is I definitely want to be checking up on your shoulder rotation, because if your shoulder rotation is in the way of being able to create that unrack pull, stuff is going to get, can get potentially loaded and being more pissed off. And kind of like the range of motion test I have in here, that I have a range of motion test in the team for people to run whenever they have shoulder junk. But basically, the thing that I want to be looking at is setting your shoulder blade down, like I was talking about the bench setup, and then seeing how far we can pull the shoulder this way, and then seeing how far we can pull the shoulder down in internal rotation without having to dump the shoulder blade. Because we're having to dump the shoulder blade, then we are gonna, we're gonna be kind of having some weird shit happening as well. And then with that range of motion test, depending on what's restricted, we can give you specific work, because similar to the low back question that I started with, we don't want to just like modify position, modify loading. We want to make sure that the stuff that is getting irritated is in shape so it doesn't get irritated in the future, so that we can have better outcomes in the future. And one last thing from Kyler, he noticed there's two types of people in the team, one that posts almost every session, the other posts only when they have a question. Do I have a preference? And I think that, like, from my end, I think that the biggest thing that I care about is that people in here are getting what they need from me. And if you feel like you need more help, then post more. If you feel like you're good, posting whenever you have a question, do that. Because again, it's like, from my end, I don't want to like force someone to post every day if it's a pain in the ass to film their lifts and they don't want to go through that pain in the ass. But if someone like Matthew in here, who posts pretty much everything he does, I also like that because it lets me kind of see what Matt's doing very regularly, so I can have like an easier time tracking and knowing what's going on and knowing what to expect. And the kind of the benefit of that too is, like, because Matt's posting pretty much every time he trains, then I get to kind of like remember what he's doing a little bit easier too. And like, if someone does, only post one lift a month, like what I'll always do is I'll click on their name and go back in and then make sure I know what they were doing, make sure I know what they said last time, just so I can make sure that, did it go in the right direction? Did it go the wrong direction? Do we need to modify strategy? And that's kind of how I keep track with this many people in here, because it's like, the people that are posted every day, I know what's going on without having to look back. The people that post less regularly, I always just make sure I look back to make sure that the new advice matches what we were doing before, and or potentially changes what I was thinking before based on how things have shaped up. And Jeremias, no sweat at all, and really, really, really stoked that this is helping you out. I figure I'll get rolling on the Instagram stuff here. So Max Hardy XD is asking, how do you do a stiff leg deadlift? It's leaving him a little bit tender on one side of the low back. And I think, as far as making a stiff leg work, hold on, just let me pull it up. Trying to find the last time I ran stiff legs on my YouTube channel. I've been running sumo stiff legs the last few weeks, so this might take me a little bit of scrolling to find a good one. Hold on. Post way too many videos on YouTube. I think I ran stiff legs on this session, so let me just get her rolling. Got to go through the ads where monetization pays me like $3 per video, but with the amount of videos we got, okay, sick. And actually, the last time I watched this video, I was showing someone stiff legs, so okay, we're on screen. So the biggest thing that I'm thinking about with my own stiff legs, and how I want most stiff legs done for powerlifting carryover, is we want a little bit of rounding through the upper back. And then as we're pushing into that stiff leg, I really want to prioritize trying to drive through the toes to push us backwards and get those quads locked as hard as we can. So we're not kind of turning that stiff leg into a bit of a ramp. And then just finishing with a really, really, really hard glute squeeze. And the benefit of kind of doing the stiff legs with that little bit of flexion is it's going to kind of set us up to get the glutes, hamstrings, and erectors to work together in the same way that we want them to work on a conventional deadlift. So that's kind of like my brief like how to stiff leg. Now, as far as what I'd be thinking about that low back pain and kind of like feeling a little bit tender, what I'd want to run a ton of, I'll actually go into the team for this because it's in the movement library and it'll be easier to find, is I'd want to run a single leg RDL. Because if we're kind of having one-sided low back pain on any sort of hinge, like just hinging on one side can be a really, really, really good way, excuse me, to build that up. And single leg RDL. And basically what I'm thinking about here is if we go to where I'm doing the demo from the side of the movement, I'm basically trying to think about trying to keep the outside hip as low as you can so that we're forced into hip internal rotation and then try to squeeze the glute up as hard as you can on the way up. And the other thing I want to do is from the front side, we're trying to use the adductors, use the hip flexors to pull us into that hip rotation as we hinge. And we don't want to be dumping out like a demo there. Like that dumping out is the wrong demo. So I definitely would be trying to not do that and really trying to get that outside hip as low as we can, because that's going to put some length through the lateral hip. And if we can start doing this better, get the hip rotating better, and then get better at transmitting force through the SIJ into the low back, then we're going to be able to have a better hinge quality. So let me know if that makes sense if you're in here. If not, I guess you'll let me know afterwards in the comment section. Now, Danny is asking, what is the difference between, I guess I need to get my phone back on the screen. Danny is asking, what is the difference between overshooting a real RP or overshooting and the real RP on the program? And I guess like, I don't know, like my head answering that question, I think that the biggest thing is like, well, the difference between overshooting and hitting RPE is that on an overshoot, you overshoot the RPE, and on the RPE, you hit the RPE. And I think that a lot of that comes from learning to gauge RPE better. And advice that I often give in the team is like, if a guy is chronically overshooting, chronically undershooting, what I usually want to do is I'll tell them to push their accessories more often towards a 10 and then maybe take a set off of the accessory work if they are going towards a 10 on one movement. And the reason I think that pushing towards a 10 RPE on an accessory is beneficial for gauging RPE is that if you better learn where the top end is, you're then going to be able to better gauge attempts on the main lifts. And again, I don't really ever want to say like, let's always push to 10s on main lifts because we're pushing to 10s on the main lifts, especially on the max effort side of things. It gets tough to build momentum. But like if someone is a chronic overshooter, then it's just going to be a matter of like, hey, recognize that you're always overshooting, then recognize that like you're probably not as capable as you think you are, which sounds like a bad thing, but if you can get better at recognizing that you're not as capable as you really are, then you can just get to training more productively. Because like the biggest thing with conjugated max effort is that the goal of max effort isn't to just go to a full out max where everything gets shitty and you die. Because if you do that, you're going to be teaching yourself bad habits and you're going to be getting in the way of the next week's max effort session. And in order to make max effort work, we need to be thinking about like, what can we do this week to make next week better? What can we do the next week to make the next week better? And so on and so forth, stacking sessions back to back to back to back. Because if we can do that, that's how we'll be able to start putting more weight on without overshooting. And then if someone is the chronic undershooter, again, that's the touch some 10s on your accessory lift so you can learn what a 10 feels like. And then you'll better be able to gauge what an accurate 8 or 9 is. Now, Vincent is asking, should we be replying to posts in the team with anything and everything we see, or wait for you to give feedback and then comment with additional input? And I am totally fine with people going in there before I get in there, because again, like I have other stuff that I got to do through the day, so I can't be in there all day long. I'm trying to spend at least, 6 to 8, maybe 10 hours a day in the team. But I also have to edit videos. I also have to do one-on-one stuff. So that takes up a chunk of time. And like when I'm doing that stuff, I can't be in the team answering stuff. So if you see anything, like I'm totally fine with you giving feedback. And if that feedback aligns with what I'm seeing, it's very easy to say like, hey, sick, that was sick, listen to this. If it doesn't, it's a really good learning opportunity for everyone in there to be like, hey, they're looking at this, they're thinking this. I can be like, hey, let's slow down just a little bit and kind of think about this a little bit differently. And yes, obviously people don't want to be wrong, but if you are wrong about something and you can figure out what you're wrong about or figure out what you need to think about differently, then you can learn and get better and be less wrong in the future. And I also really like it too because there's a lot of coaches in here that have really good ideas. Like Gabby is so freaking good at seeing stuff, and like her kind of cue selection, her verbiage is a little bit different than mine. And like sometimes it makes me think differently about things that when she posts, or even when Darrell and Keelan get in there, like seeing their feedback, it makes it a whole lot, better for me too, because it lets me learn as well. So I'm totally fine with people posting in there before I do. It's just a matter of, whether or not you want to do it, go for it. Now, Guy is asking, he's also in the Instagram as well. What do you think about supplements, which suck and which don't suck? Specifically, I'm interested in pre workout with caffeine. Sounds weird. And I am a stim junkie, so I thrive on pre workout. And it's one of those things where it is absolutely unnecessary. And like most of the ingredients really don't do shit. They're just kind of in there to, waste waste your money and get the supplement company a little bit more money. But the one that Miana and I use is the Sebum Essentials because it's basically just, caffeine, citrulline, beta alanine, and pretty big doses of each. And, the caffeine, obviously, it's the wake up, gives you a little bit extra boost and a little bit extra contraction as well. Citrulline helps with getting a sweet, sweet, sweet pump. And the beta alanine probably doesn't do a ton for performance, but I like the feels of tingles. And that's like a good one that isn't too expensive, that basically just has stuff that works ingredients. Now, as far as other supplements go, like the only other supplement I use other than the Sebum Pre is protein powder. And the biggest reason I use protein powder is that with as much as I work, I often don't have time to eat. So I will just chug a shake and then get back to work. So that's kind of like my list of things that I will actually use. And I think that a lot of other stuff is, sure, maybe there is some benefit, but I don't think the benefit is worth, doing it. And I know I didn't say creatine is something that I use. It's just like for me in creatine, with the amount of red meat that I eat, the amount of bison that's in my diet when I do have, when I'm not crap for time and just climbing a protein shake, like I've never really felt a direct benefit from adding supplemental creatine just because my red meat consumption is already so high that it's just one of those things where it's like, well, I don't notice it. Nothing, literally nothing happens. So I'm personally fine without creatine. But if you're someone that isn't just eating bison for, 4 of your 6 meals a day, then maybe creatine supplementation is definitely worth it. But that's just kind of my take on it personally, because I just don't feel like it does anything for me. And if I have one less thing to take, that's just less to think about as well. But I'm going to try to rip through the rest of these. There's probably more in here since I haven't refreshed, but you can't find my video on helping elbow pain in bench. What was the movement again? And I'm going to do this because I don't know, because I've had a ton of elbow stuff on bench on YouTube. But what I am going to put on here is I have this Fix Your Elbows webinar. So just like search Fix Your Elbows full webinar, Dr. Seth Albersworth, you'll be able to find this whole thing on YouTube for free. And this is basically like my entire framework of thinking about elbows and making elbows better. So no matter what movement you are thinking about, you will probably find it in here. So I would definitely give that guy a watch, because again, like I have a ton of like medium length videos on elbow stuff. So I'm not sure which movement you are talking about, but definitely give that a look. Gary is asking, how many days out from a comp should your last heavy 3 lifts be? And I think that like my answer is going to be relative to what I define as heavy. And if I'm going to answer this question, like I think that the biggest thing that I want to do, especially with how I have stuff set up in the team with kind of like the peaking examples, is if we just go in back to the classroom, go to the make conjugate work, the peaking, basically everything in here operates on 3-week waves. So if we are thinking about 3-week waves, we're trying to get the meet day to happen at the top of a 3-week wave. So we basically want to set ourselves up so that at 5 weeks out, we're kind of starting the peak. At 4 weeks out, we're doing a little bit of ramp up. At 3 weeks out, it's going to be our last heavy lift. At 2 weeks out, it's going to be kind of the start of the taper. So it'll be a little bit lighter than the last heavy, but still heavy enough to give us enough stimulus to carry through. And then 1 week out, we want to kind of select a loading that will be heavy enough again to carry us through and count as an exposure to push us into the meet. And then everything else meet week, I run pretty darn light. This is, inspired by Mike T, but I find that for myself, I rather keep these a little bit more scaled down than he does and not kind of have the exposures as tight to the meat to make this work well. Because I have done it kind of the full Mike T peak strategy before for myself and other lifters. And that I find I can get better outcomes if I do bias a little bit more recovery versus having things pushed quite as far. And kind of in that, again, I'm still making sure that in order to kind of have the wave go like this is going to be week 1 of the wave, this is going to be week 2 of the wave, meet day ends up being week 3. The start of the taper, what I usually like to do is run something opener, maybe a little bit heavier than opener depending on the lifter's level. And then 1 week out, if a guy is really strong, like I got Jordan Wong doing Ghost Clash in 2 weeks, and what we're doing for the 2 out is, or what we're doing for the 1 out is we are going to be having him run his like second last warm up on squats, and then second last warm up on deadlifts, and then his last warm up on bench, because again, bench, I'm not quite as worried about fatigue there. So it's going to be a matter of kind of like scaling it to the lifter and determining what we define as heavy. But like my last big one is usually in that 3 week out from the meet range, so we can have 2 more exposures that aren't super heavy but still heavy enough to get us to the meet, so that on meet day we're fresh but we still have the exposures that are going to help us actually peak into the meet as we taper out volume on the rest of everything else. And last question that showed up in the Instagram before I refresh it is, decline bench going to be helpful in getting stronger in the middle of a bench? And I think like I don't have a great reason for a powerlifter to ever train decline. Because if we're thinking about like decline, like yes, it is less range of motion. Like yes, you might catch more serratus, but we can get more range of or less range of motion in better ways than setting up on a decline bench, and we can catch serratus in better ways than just running decline benches. So I don't have a great reason for anyone to ever really do decline on a competition, like on a barbell bench for the sake of powerlifting. And what I'd rather do is like, if you are struggling with mid range, I'd be thinking about, okay, how is shape changing at that mid-range sticking point? And depending on how shape's changing, like maybe we want to bias more triceps, maybe we want to bias more bench, maybe we want more pecs in the bottom to help push us through that mid-range stick. And if we can kind of figure out where things are going on bench, then we can then decide what accessories, what secondaries to run to improve that sticking point. But without seeing it, it's kind of hard to know. But kind of in general is, if we are getting to a sticking point in the mid-range where stuff just dies and we can't really squirm and go anywhere, I'd probably be thinking more triceps. If we are able to open up at that mid-range sticking point and then guide through, I'd be thinking a little bit more front delt, maybe clavicular pec. But without seeing the bench, I don't have a great option. And I figure that with what I got to do the rest of the day, I'll probably get closing this up here. Oh, so Marcus is asking, can I ask what about the feedback that I gave him on his deadlift with neck to the roof? So just going to search his name. I guess I should switch the thingy. Marcus, click on his name because it search makes things a little bit weird. Okay, so here is his deadlift coming up. So what I'm looking at is right now, I'll just let the lift show so you can see, but I'm paying attention to the head position, paying attention to the back of the neck position. And you can kind of see how on his setup, the head is down, the neck is pretty down. And then as he wedges in, he picks the head up, but the neck doesn't really come with it. And if we're thinking about like mechanics of cervical spine, if we are going to be just globally extending, pulling the head just up like that, looking up to the sky, making sure I'm still in frame. But if we're doing this, what's going to happen as we do this is the bottom of the C-spine, top of the T-spine is going to drop forward and get, closer to the barbell. What we want to try to do is keep the chin down and then just pull everything backwards. That's going to get the bottom of the C-spine, top of the T-spine to pull away, which can help us get slack out of the arms, help us get the rib cage a little bit taller, and make that start position a little bit more favorable. So does that make more sense for you, Marcus? Hopefully. But basically, what I want the goal to be is when you're here, let's drop chin down. And then instead of looking up to create the wedge, I want to just think about having that chin and head neutral with the whole body and then pulling everything backwards. And that should let you feel a little bit more assertive off the floor. And I figure while we're here, I'll just refresh the Instagram to see if anything else popped up. Oh yeah, just got guys' questions, so that is it. It's actually nice going like, hey, I'm going to be answering this on YouTube because then I don't get 3 million. So thank you for everyone who did ask a question. And if any of you guys here are not in the team, you probably should be in the team because it is freaking sick. And today is the last day that we are doing the lower rate for new joins. So tomorrow it's going to be 99 a month to sign up. And the reason I'm doing that is number one, to keep ensuring that I can give everyone individual feedback on everything that they're doing. And number two, it's like we just kind of realized that what we are doing here is so much better than what a lot of coaches are offering, that we probably should just charge reflective of what coaches are offering. And I think like the biggest hesitancy to a lot of people joining the team is that because it is like a group setting, they're worried that they're not going to get their stuff looked at and they're just going to get shoved to the bottom. But like I make sure that I do my absolute best to get through everything every single day. Sometimes with how like the pages are sorted, like what'll end up happening is like, because if I'm posting new stuff, like stuff will get bumped back and sometimes like something will get like bumped to page 2 or page 3. But I always make sure that everything is like totally covered just so people are getting individual attention from me on everything that they need to do. And it just makes it like so cool because like giving that individual attention, like I'm invested in what people are doing and I want people in here to get better because people in here getting better makes me look better as a coach. So it is so freaking sick. So if you aren't in here, prices are going up tomorrow. So get in here before that happens because, you know, when it happens, it'll cost you more money. But the other thing we're going to do too with the price increase as well, since we're going from the 49 to 99, is that'll let us start giving a shirt to every new sign up for their first month. So if you want to wait and get a free shirt on the monthly, then you can do that. But I'd probably rather say like, hey, just sign up monthly at a cheaper rate and then, you know, get the shirt with the money you save because then your next month's will be cheaper as well. Oh, and Oscar saying his main worry with joining the team was that Seth wouldn't be able to keep up with 300 plus people in there. But it's impressive on how he actually doesn't miss any posts. And like again, like I say this all the time, but I am putting so much freaking effort into making this as good as possible. And like how a guy does one thing is how a guy does everything. And like I think that with how I am, it's like I can't do anything shitty because if I did it shitty, I would hate myself. So I'm really trying to make it as good as possible for everyone in here. So I'm stoked and super grateful for all of you guys because it's just so much fun for me. And I talked about this on the office hours the other week, but when I was in undergrad, I grew up racing motocross. Like motocross was the first sport that I ever did and did well at. But I raced from the ages of 4 to 17, so pretty long career. Did halfway decent. Got a Canadian pro card, which means that in the scope of American motocross, I still kind of sucked. But I got pretty far with it. But I absolutely loved it. And then shoulder injuries, surgeries, SC joint separation took me out of that. And in undergrad, because I still liked the sport and I still wanted to be around it, like my summer job in undergrad was grooming the motocross track. And that was a freaking long ass day. It was basically 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. But I loved it because I was doing what I loved and it felt like what I was doing meant something because I was just making the track sick as shit. And having the team is the first thing that I've done since then that felt the same, where I am happy to have my alarm go off at 3:30 in the morning to get things rolling, get in there. I'm happy to make sure that everything's done, even if that means that I got to stay up till 11 answering stuff to be up at 3 in the morning the next day to answer stuff. So I'm just freaking stoked and I'm having so much fun with it. So appreciate all of you guys for being in there. And I figure that this should be a pretty half decent note to end this on. And for those of you who clicked on it expecting a form check Friday, I apologize for having the wrong title thumbnail because I swear I clicked the right one when I set up the stream, but I am also an idiot. So yeah. Peace out. Have a good rest of your day. And join the team if you aren't because it really is sick. Oh, one more question. Do I still ride? So I kind of had the BMX bike adventure last summer where I was kind of like getting back on the BMX bike to kind of try to ease my way back in. I might actually see if I can pull this up just to, because like when I was in Florida, I was riding BMX a ton, but I was also, 240 when I was riding BMX a ton. Last summer, I was only got down to about like 250, so it was still like a little bit heavier through most of the summer to ever feel comfy on it. But I was kind of doing that with the intent of getting back on a motocross bike, but it kind of also was thinking like, hey, if I really do care about my powerlifting goals, I should probably just, fart around the BMX bike just so I'm not slamming myself into the dirt at, you know, 60 plus kilometers per hour, because if I did that and I hurt myself on a dirt bike, I would be very sad for my powerlifting career. So I am not gonna do that most likely until everything is done with powerlifting. But I think that, like, vet class racing, like that could be very, very, very fun to do in my 40s once I get there and like the powerlifting stuff is all taken care of. But yeah, I think like it's just kind of like the fear and safety of like not wanting to sacrifice the thing that I really, really, really care about just to have fun. And like a BMX bike, I can have the same amount of fun with a much lower risk level than a motocross bike. So we're we're avoiding the moto for now for that reason. But on that note,